Women for Global Growth. We chose this topic a year ago, and I cannot but admire female intuition because now this phrase meets our objectives more than ever. Let me introduce myself. Marina Valinkina, Director of the University for Humanities and Information Technology, co-founder Peace 50 project. We will moderate our meeting together with Anna Wolf from Germany, who greatly contributed to setting up this summit. Let me give the floor for our first speaker, Gülden Türkten from Turkey. She is a founder and the first president of Women 20, former president of the Women Entrepreneurs Association of Turkey. She has been recently elected to be the president of the board of International Women Forum in Turkey. She has delivered outspoken speeches about public policy issues related to women. Her highest professionalism won my heart several years ago, and now I am happy that we are friends. So, Gülden, welcome.
Welcome to all. Great to be here. Great to talk about global growth and peace, which is a necessity for global growth. But now I will speak about gender today to all of you. It's a valuable meeting, but gender is also a valuable part of our society. It has been a long-standing issue for almost all the countries. Whenever a gender issue is raised, it's a human right, and everybody says, oh yes, you're right, but not now. Okay, we understand you, but not now. So it has been postponed so many years. Now what's happening is, since 1999, world economies came together to have a better economy, a sustainable economy, a growth where the people of the world can have a better income, better TV, better car, better house, whatever is, prosperity and growth. But unfortunately, even if they have come together since 1999, it was regular meetings of Group 20, which is governments of biggest 20 countries, which includes 19 countries plus European Union, which makes a lot of countries. And these countries are collectively account for 90% of the gross world product. It's not national product any longer, the world product, 90%. 80% of world trade, 2/3 of the world population, and half of the land in the world. So if we think and if we support that all these big countries can do something for gender, can do something for prosperity of the people in their countries, the world will become a much better place for all of us. But the progress has not been that quick. What happened is that first time ever, a gender movement got an invitation in 2015 from the G countries. When you remember G countries, you see a lot of presidents, prime ministers, mostly male, except for very few women, which was the head of IMF, Chancellor of Germany, Prime Minister of UK who has left, and it's all male energy. And this male energy wanted a solution for their countries. They are mostly politicians, and they want to give something better to their people. But to give this something better they don't know the solution. So within G20, there is a lot of research, which is something called Think 20, where the academicians and the think tanks are trying to come up with solutions for prosperity. And in 2012, in Los Cabos, Mexico, G20 countries said we must include social inclusion of women and economic inclusion of women. We must include women into our economies, which was a breakthrough for gender studies because earlier, yes, it is there, but I mean, there was no sincere invitation. In 2013, in St. Petersburg, Russia, G20 countries signed for financial inclusion of women. Women are behind in financial inclusion, in banking, in the finance world. So let's have them included in the economy. This signature is very valuable for women. It's another invitation. A bigger invitation came in 2014 in Brisbane, Australia. G20 countries, we were always looking for a numerical target, but that numerical target never existed. Nobody agreed on a numerical target. And this time in Brisbane, G20 countries signed for 25 by 25. Okay, every country has their own specific pluses and negatives about gender. But let's get the woman with respect to men 25% better in your countries. So 25% improvement for women in women's economic inclusion until the year 2025, which was a breakthrough for women's studies. And after that, we said to our friends and politicians and international thinkers, let's get Women 20 out of G20 so that we work on this action plan. There was support, there was discouragement. Forget about it, come to me, we are doing all the research. It's not necessary, we know no women are necessary, kind of remarks. But finally, in 2015, in Antalya, G20 welcomed W20 in their declaration. And that year in Istanbul, we had our W20 meeting. What is the roadmap for 25% decrease in the gap of men and women? So there needed to be a declaration established, and it was called the communique. All the G publications, final publications, where 20 countries are signing, more than 20 countries, but member states are signing, is called communique. In the first W20 communique, education, equal opportunity, financial inclusion, work and life balance, decent work environment, rural women, which is a very important segment of women that works in our farms or out in the fields, and women who can make innovation or who are better in technology were the topics, and women leadership, of course. Continuing after that, discouragement included, this is the end of W20, now you have said this is finished. To their surprise came China, the W20 declaration of Xi'an, China, and all the aspects plus another aspect was included, digital inclusion, and digital inclusion came from China. In 2017, in Berlin, Germany, W20 meetings were held, 3 meetings, 1 dinner, working dinner, where Chancellor Merkel joined 3 times to a W20 meeting, which was a record because we had our president coming, China had their officials coming, and president talking about W20, but Angela Merkel's, Chancellor Merkel's positive attitude towards W20 was a breakthrough for W20. And in that same year, G20 countries signed a one page of W20 declaration into G20 declaration, which means they are sincere in trying to improve their economies with women's inclusion. In 2018, Buenos Aires came, and Buenos Aires is, as you know, a beautiful country in the Americas, and they kept the rural woman as well as the indigenous woman, where the women that have been living there for so many years. And that inclusion made W20 work perfect. Last year in Tokyo, there was, a lot of discussion is going on while we are trying to work for action plan for governments. Or Japan has no women, so there will not be a very good meeting in W20 in Japan. They had very good women, very dedicated academicians, very good people, and their prime minister said, if I see a road where I can be better off, my economy prospering, my economy is growing, I will love to take action on that. And if it is women, I will include them in my economy. It was easy for Japan to include their women in the economy because they were all well educated and really they showed a growth. Now this year, the president of G20 is Saudi Arabia. There is no final W20 communique yet, but they are working very effectively and very diligently with all the international organizations and think tanks that they will be contributing to W20 goals and prosperity of the countries. And I think they see this as an opportunity for making their women a part of their economy, which is great to see. Uh, what the communique is saying, and for last few words, removal of legal and social barriers, better labor market, decent work conditions, less digital gap, less financial inclusion, more education in technology, better education about our own and people's gender bias. Fight for all forms of violence. When we say all forms of violence, you know that women are more exposed to violence, and peace is the cure for violence. When you live in peace, when you have better peace environment, violence gets less. So every country, to increase their purchasing power parity, their sustainability, their education, their environment, they need to have better communication and transparency and savings and investments and growth and peace. They need to include women. This is very clear from academic work. This is very clear from the G countries' signatures. Now, what is left is the action. We need to take more action. When we have women, we have less waste, we have less poverty, we have less illiteracy, and less conflicts. So, as I said, peace breaks the violence in all forms, in the workplace, in the family, in the world. So when the prosperity increases, we are all better off in our societies. Now I see that COVID, all this work is going on and there is natural problems. One of this issue is pandemic worldwide. In this pandemic world, recovery depends on women's energy. I know that people, we said growth, and now there is no growth. Just the opposite, the economies are getting smaller, the income is getting smaller due to COVID, not very much in our control. pandemic can happen anywhere. I will not sign off Trump's suggestion, but it happened. So we are now less off. But for us to be better off, we need more women. And this is going to happen, I believe. Women are going to be engaged in restructuring the losses and getting ourselves on our feet. I hope all of your families and your loved ones are good under this, but now it's time to work in peace, in hand with all of us all around the world, so that we need a better world. And I know that this group can do that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for a wonderful speech, Yildan. You are an amazing woman, I know. So it was great. And today we're holding the summit online instead of meeting face to face. Who would have thought that a few months ago this would happen? It is not a surprise that our world has become unsteady. We have no other choice than to accept its unsteadiness, because that is the only way how we can adapt to the new order, to move on with life, to maintain creativity and to grow. Despite all the changes of the recent months, we kept the topic of the summit: global women for global growth. Today we are facing a challenge: how to preserve what we achieved in the economic and social sense. And we must grow in line with the task ahead of us as never before. COVID-19 opened the Pandora box. It exposed problems which humankind has been facing long before, but which have been brought to the surface by the pandemic. This is increasing uncertainty and fears, the negative effects of consumption habits on welfare and ecology, deliberate disinformation and distrust in institutions, the rise of racism around the world. In recent months, the world was ruled by anxieties and fears. Fears of contracting the coronavirus, fears of unemployment and loss of income, fears of isolation, and anxiety about the future. In the media, COVID-19 has become a superstar. In fact, it has become a destructive informational virus. Humanity cannot develop when chained by fear. It must be driven by the healing creative force of love. Today, humankind can only grow if it transforms fears in healing and creative power, power of love. Referring to love, I do not mean just a feeling. Referring to love, I mean that inner energy that drives every individual, that devotion which is present in all spheres of our life. Love is action. At all times in the history of humankind, women have lived up to that notion. Unsurprisingly, women took the responsibility for the mental and physical well-being of their families, their businesses, and their communities during the pandemic. Therefore, we, women leaders, must guide a new system of values which is nurtured by the energy of life, of love. We, women of the world, must develop and propose new social principles which should be fixed in the constitutions of our country. However, there is a positive side of this pandemic crisis. It opened a lot of people's eyes to the inefficiency of the conventional social and economic order. We saw that the traditional system of values have become outdated, but an individual without value can quickly turn into a victim of life circumstances. a victim of uncertainty. Today, all modern developed society are based on consumerist principles. We're steadily losing this main notion of individuality, which is a major responsibility for oneself and other, for society and environment, a desire to create in harmony with the world. But how we can turn words into action? I believe today women leaders are capable of institutional creativity. We are capable of, and therefore we are responsible for bringing the principles of love, creation, and sustainable development to educational, economic, and cultural life of all of our nations. I assume that in each of our countries, we need to rethink our educational system, to rethink our economic system, and to rethink the media landscape. First, we must create a progressive and future-focused education system which is centered around skills required to become a contributing citizen of society. The educational system should help people to develop their personality in which social responsibility is guiding principle. This can only be achieved by teachers who are free and creative, who are not restricted by rigid or outdated guidelines. This is the education we feel committed to at our college. We have trained several generations of experts in communication, design, linguistics, and management. And we are proud that our graduates and students love their profession, fill them with proper meaning, volunteer, and strive to be useful to people and society in general. The second aspect I feel crucial is the public social system. It needs to be completely rebuilt with care, mercy, and common sense. It is necessary to identify the zones of responsibility of state and public structures clearly. Caring for people with disabilities should be the direct responsibility of the public social system. Today, the responsibility lies mainly on families and charity. The state must take care, full care of people with disabilities regarding their education, treatment, and employment, without transferring their responsibility to the private sector. Such an attitude to people with disabilities should become part of the political culture. To achieve real changes, we need more than just some political or administrative decisions. We need to change the self-perception of our society. We need to spread social awareness and a sense of social responsibility. Media has become a powerful global tool. A society's self-perception, level of well-being, and resilience strong depends on the information it is exposed to. However, the global media more and more lack the sense of responsibility, respect, and most of all, love. The pandemic clearly showed it. The vast majority of global media have made every effort to aggravate anxiety, to create and recreate bad news, and to foster a permanent agitation. Little has been done to reassure and comfort the population. The media are not just the force power, they are the key interpreter of our reality. Society must be informed by media, but not to be ruled by them. The request special preventations against dominant influence on public opinion by media. During the first summit in Brussels, we signed a memorandum in support of responsible media. Now it is time to move forward. I believe that these principles should become part of our new global agenda. We, women, can address all these issues without relying on politicians, official, government, and other institutions. We can change the world through love, compassion, trust, and cooperation. Let us do it together. Thank you.
Yeah, now I have the great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, who is Joy Nicole Martinet. She is Chief Executive Officer of the Alchemist Agency and Director of Research and Development of the World Women Foundation. She's an award-winning international trainer and speaker, and she has more than 6,000 followers on Twitter, which I discovered. And now I have to read up. She holds university degrees in health, political science, and MBA, among others, from Harvard University, from the University of California at San Francisco Medical School. And above all of this, she is a mother of 5. So she could have talked on so many topics to us, but she kindly agreed to talk today on racism, quite a personal issue. And we are really grateful for this because most people don't regard themselves as racist or do not see color, which I belong to. But looking deeply, I think that not seeing color is maybe the same like not to care. And we must learn how to see it proper. And Joy Nicole will share with us her view how to lead a complex conversation on racism with honesty, courage, and candor. Joy Nicole, please.
Anna, you are so gracious. Oh gosh, I absolutely love you. I do. Thank you so much for the introduction. I told you it astounds me that such rich, beautiful, accomplished women would see anything to say positive about me. I'm so impressed always. And I go, why in the world would you want to introduce me? Like I should introduce you. But thank you for it. I am excited to be here today. I'm so excited to see so many of my friends and my sisters, my true sisters. I'm very pleased. And at the same time, I'm very sad because we have to have this conversation. And big surprise, I've been a Black woman every day for 45 years. And now I find there's reason to have conversation with my friends, with women and men I consider family, where my race was never a part of our relationship. And suddenly it seems to be in the forefront of our relationship. So let me start with a story because someone I love, I see her face, Vanda. And I remember when we met last year, I asked this beautiful woman if she'd like to just have something to drink together. It was hot. And I remember her face, just her reply was so, what? But why and why? And I remember her shock and feeling, oh my goodness, I've listened to your brilliance. I've heard your heart. I felt your passion. Nothing in me doesn't want to spend some time with you. And of course, I see your face. You see mine. Usually, the first thing people see when they see each other is their skin. So it wasn't about being blind to the fact that this South African white woman right? And this North American Black woman were going to walk the street and enjoy each other. We saw it. The joy in it is that we could celebrate it, that we could stop and say, it's just two women sharing a minute, enjoying something refreshing, and race didn't have to be in the forefront. We didn't ignore it. We didn't decide to be blind to it. We decided to share it, to share the triumph in it. And that's what I'd like to talk about today, how not to ignore race, but how to celebrate it in a way that no one has to be ashamed. Black, white, or polka dotted. It's said racism and hatred are not innate, that these feelings are taught, that we're not born with them. But when my 7-year-old experiences explicit racism in her neighborhood, I'm challenged to believe whether or not we don't truly have a natural inclination to only love things that are familiar to us. When I hear my husband at work in a Fortune 100 company still dealing with Black and white issues, I'm challenged to believe we aren't filled from the beginning with some sort of acrid bitterness. It's a challenge to walk upright and to hold your head up when you're constantly looking from side to side for the person who may not be able to accept who you are. So racism, we say, right, is discrimination, it's prejudice directed at a person because of their grouping. And in racism, it's their race or ethnic grouping. And then we compound that with a belief that somehow that characteristic makes you inferior or superior. But everyday racism that seeks to demean and seeks to silence a race or ethnicity, it does nothing as much as the systemic racism that tends to creep into our cultures and that's woven into the way our nations are built and how they relate. Gulden, who is an extraordinarily brilliant woman, talked about the gender issues we have across the globe. In every nation, we find this inequity for women. Now, imagine for a moment being a woman already destined by systemic issues to have less, and then being a woman of color, and then being a woman of dark color. These compounded characteristics in a world where people see your skin first and your brain last, it causes an issue of self-loathing and external loathing. It builds walls and it collapses bridges. And let's be clear, where there is hate, there can be no peace. And where there are feelings of inequality, there can be no peace. And when children are forced to fight for food, there can be no peace. When women are forced to fight for opportunity, there can be no peace. And when men are forced to defend themselves for their very lives because of their skin color, there will be no peace. I digress. Because ultimately, where there is no love, right? My dear sister said it so beautifully. Where there is no love, there is no peace. And racism is the absence of love. The person doesn't love themselves because the racist has to see themselves as superior in order to reconcile the equality of the other race. Follow me? The racist has to see themselves as superior in order to reconcile that perhaps there is someone as good. Perhaps there is someone better. Perhaps I am not the best. Much like the common schoolyard bully, they are forced by their own lack of esteem to subjugate someone else. Even that person internally has no peace. So Anna said today she wanted to be sure she wasn't being just colorblind, that she wasn't forgetting to recognize the beauty of the existence of uniqueness. And I applaud you because that's a very challenging place to be. It's challenging to sit down and say, am I racist? Have I held on to prejudices? Am I biased? It's challenging because we've been taught if you just accept people, you are not a racist. Yes? If you just don't bother them, you are not a racist. But if we are going to have complex and candid conversations, we have to talk about anti-racism. I love my sisters on this call and in this event because from the first day, they were anti-racist. Because every one of you, when I walked tired and sweaty into a hotel, you didn't go, oh, you jumped up, you embraced me, you poured water, you moved, you made space for me, for this Black American woman. You made and created space for me. You opened your doors to me. You opened your ears to hear. That behavior speaks to your anti-racism. Every time we share each other's tweets and LinkedIn posts, and I put hearts, and I mean every silly emoji. I mean it because it's my way of saying I will support, encourage, I will stand with you despite the fact that we are different, because I can embrace the reality of our difference. And I want you to be free in solidarity and in peace to have a conversation with me. Vanda asked me, you would go and have a drink with me? And I said to her, absolutely. Why would I not? This is our behavior. Racism is only squashed, it's only removed, not by a feeling, but by an action. So, how do we ensure that we are making behavior, that we are moving in action that brings us to a place that we are breaking down racial stereotypes and rebuilding our cultures and our countries in a way that systemic racism is removed? Well, first, if we're going to talk, please bring your best self. Have taken the time to really consider who you are. Vanda's surprise was because she recognized and owned the historical systemic issues of apartheid in her country. She didn't shy away from it. She brought it to the conversation. And that gave us an opportunity to share our experience and our beliefs surrounding it. She brought her best, most self-aware, and most honest self. It requires us to explore our perspectives and then to remain open to the perspectives of others. Something that has offended me lately is the conversation I get that says, oh, Dr. Joy, Black Lives Matter. And when I say, I don't need you to repeat a hashtag to me, I have been Black all of my life, and my life has always mattered. And if we have been friends, if we have been in confidence, and if we have been in communication for 20 years, and you are just realizing my life matters, well, we have a more serious problem. I don't need you to repeat trend to me. I need you to actively listen to me. So pay careful attention. Seek to hear me and to understand my perspective and my experience. I can no more speak for every Black woman or Black American than either of you could speak for your entire nation. My experience is unique based on my parents and grandparents. I was raised with great grandparents. I come from a strong family filled with professionals and entrepreneurs. I've not known hunger a day in my life, though I've lived in very uncomfortable homes and shelters. My family is deeply rooted in their faith. The men in my family have fought to stay home, even when the women in my family would have been rewarded by the state had they left. My experience is unique. And so please hear me. Actively listen when you're asking a question about race, because no two people, just because they identify the same way, have lived and experienced that identity the same way. Speak your truth. Don't hold back. I want to know everything. Tell me, did you one day feel you should hate me? Are you surprised that I can speak English? People sometimes are. They see my name, they hear my voice, they're shocked. Pero sí, yo puedo hablar español también. So speak your truth, because I want to hear you as well. Difficulty arises in complex conversation when the speaker first is heard and the receiver relents. The complexity is not negative. We always assume conflict is bad, but growth and development only occurs where there's conflict, right? There's no children unless there's some conflict in our bodies. And eventually that conflict is what releases them from us. And then we have more conflict and they move out, thank God, from our homes, right? Conflict is not bad. So don't shy away. Speak your truth. Tell me how you understood and how that may be the same or different than the way I'm asking you to now understand. So I'm asking you to lean in to this very big, uncomfortable conversation. Don't shy away. Dig deep. Ask yourself, have you driven in your neighborhood and realized that you have grocery stores, fertility clinics? And if you drive into most Black American neighborhoods, you will see food deserts and abortion clinics. Don't shy away from that conversation. Ask yourself, have you seen at your workplace where your minority female coworkers are paid less, asked less, honored less, that they're elevated less? Question it, lean into it. Because racism is not about what you feel, it's about what you do. And if you only feel, well, I've done nothing wrong, well, the reality is that you've done nothing good. So lean in Lean into your discomfort. And finally, accept that there may not be closure. The worst part of this conversation is that you may walk away still not quite understanding. And that is just truth. Because I can never fully tell you what it is to be a Black American woman, doctor, mother, right? Wife. I can never fully explain 45 years in our 45-minute conversation. I can't tell you what it felt like to be spat on or to be called a racial slur, still in my clinical blues with the stethoscope while I'm trying to save a life. I can't tell you what it feels like to, in the midst of a pandemic in a nation that has skyrocketing numbers of those who are infected, and to be in a county that is the worst in my state, to have skyrocketing numbers of those hospitalized, and more than half of them be under 60, to work 16 or 17 hours and to have to deal with the fact that most of the minority people I'm treating don't have any way of conquering because we have systemic racism in our healthcare system. It exists, and I have to deal with that daily. I can't tell you the frustration and the hurt and how many days I've come home angry because how can I talk enough? How many policies can I write and rewrite? What behavior am I not doing that could lend change? And I have to accept that alone, I cannot bring closure. Our choices require us to continually be self aware. And in the absence of behavior, in the absence of making anti racist choices, we unconsciously uphold the aspects of racial supremacy, dominating cultures, and unequal institutions. Because peace and love and equity, being racist or anti racist, is not about what we feel or what we are, it's about what we do.
Mm.
And thank you.
Thank you so much, Joy Nicole. I can't imagine. Thank you so much for your honesty and for your emotional talk. I can't imagine that anyone can walk from this without taking anything. And I can just say what I took from it, that it is absolutely not enough nowadays, and again, or maybe it was never enough, just to be confident, not to be a racist oneself. I think, and this was your last call, and this what we all participants of the summit, especially those of the white color, it is also a color taking with us, that to combat, to fight racism, we have to act against it together, everybody, and not just feel comfortable with oneself saying that I'm not. It's we have to address this issue together for more peace for all our children, for
Yes.
everybody, because bad things come always back, and we have to think about the future of our children. And although there will be probably no closure of this in our lives, but who knows? Things change so fast today.
Today, we are making an obvious difference today.
I also think so. I hope so. Yeah.
Joy Nicole, thank you so much for your wonderful speech. You know that we are sisters every time we send each other this message, and it's our message full of love. So, as always, we are speaking in unison. We are calling upon all people on the planet to learn to look deeper into themselves and to look at themselves from outside. And it is especially important now in our area, digitalization area. So I believe that our next speaker, Tatiana Markova from Israel, will touch upon another important subject, the language in which we should communicate one to another to preserve peace in the world. Let me give the floor to Tatiana.
Thank you so much, Marina. Thank you so much for introducing me. And oh my God, what amazing speeches. I was moved so much with everything which was said. And I'm very happy to proceed with my subject and honored to be here today. Well, I'm going to speak about the language. And as we know, the language is a system of signs. Using language, we exchange information of all types with one another. Language, a product of the uniquely human gift of speech, is inherently social. Human communication relies upon our words. As soon as speech appeared, intercultural communication emerged. Language connects us at every level, in communities, between nations, and among peoples. We, women from different cultures, from different countries of the world, speaking different languages, must learn to speak the language of love, to respect each other, and to unite to solve global problems. Language has the power to unite people. It is urgent that the understanding of the world now be the same for all people. We have just one sky for everyone and just one planet Earth. And it's women with gentle and resilient power who must now teach the world to speak the same language. We, the women of the world, must make language an instrument for gaining and maintaining peace. We must show that by joining together, we can find solutions and create harmony. We can do this by establishing and maintaining intercultural communication and supporting dialogue, crucial for the times when misunderstanding threatens our well-being. Across the globe, schools must not only require foreign language study, but must start to feel the content of all disciplines with appreciation and respect, love for people from different countries around the world. It is necessary to teach and talk openly about culture and traditions of diverse peoples. Teaching language can certainly lay a sympathetic foundation. People should first be able to understand each other, feel for one another, and learn how to build relationships based on loving kindness and empathy. Foreign language teaching is just the beginning, however. In order for understanding, consent, and communication among representatives of different cultures to flourish, mutual respect and knowledge of important aspects of culture and history are necessary. Really knowing and respecting the culture of another country and communicating with representatives of another culture, this is the bridge to greater understanding around the world. This is our path to dialogue, not at the political level, but at the precious ground level of communication between people. Then we can truly speak the same language, the language of respect, the language of love and understanding. The Bible itself tells the story of language's ultimate power to unite. God first created people who all spoke the same language, but so that they might live in peace and harmony. But as mankind ceased to obey the commandments of God, the Lord endowed people with different languages, scattering them across the earth. And people again needed to learn how to find common language for communication, for unification. This common language may change, Today, this forum, this summit is in English. And English functions as a tool for sharing ideas, sharing solutions. It's a communication tool. And when there is communication, there is dialogue. If the dialogue is accompanied by mutual respect and support, as we see it here today, constructive changes are possible and peace is possible. Today, the world crosses the Rubicon. COVID-19 revealed many problems we must urgently face together. And it is we, women, who must speak boldly in a single language, that of love, reminding the world that understanding is possible. Unity is possible. Our future together in peace is possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tatiana. Thank you. And I think we need 10 minutes for coffee. Only 10 minutes because we need, yes, Joy Nicole, I see. But our translator needs 10 minutes. So not more, just 10 minutes. Okay? Thank you. Поставим заставочку. Republic today. She is a honorary president of Free State Women Agricultural Union. I know her as a woman who always radiated positive energy. She cares of a lot of charity work. It is a great pleasure for me to give the floor for her. Wanda, you're welcome.
Madam Chair, honored guests,
Yes.
colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the invitation to participate in the Summer Peace Summit, Global Women for Global Growth. Being invited as a participant to this summit always remains an honor and a privilege. And I thank you for the opportunity. At the time, I have been positively inspired by your contributions today. Thank you. It gives me great pleasure to share my views on how women can foster peace and understanding within as well as across nations. Women are the epitome of strength, love, sacrifice, and courage. We are able to create a positive impression in society. We as women have established ourselves socially, politically, and economically in almost every field. A culture of peace requires the participation of women in all fields. Women generally remain absent from policy dialogue with governments on critical issues for peace. The presence of women in high-level discussions can make a remarkable difference. We as women are important agents for creating stability in the lives of our families and to promote reconciliation and peace, even under very difficult and traumatic situations. We need to radiate energy and resourcefulness. We need to create a new system of values and re-establish love in people's hearts. Let us strive to achieve something good and to leave a recognizable mark in our communities. By providing positive role models for women's involvement at all levels of decision making, we can organize cross-border or cross-country dialogues and draw up sets of recommendations. We, as women of the globe, need to establish a system of networks between different women's organizations. Women's groups can play a major role in working for peace and reconciliation at local and national levels. Individual women can use their high status to negotiate peace in their communities and can continue to use their influence to maintain constructive dialogue. Humanitarian networks are critically important, and contacts with women from other parts of the world are influential in bringing support and assistance from abroad. It is our responsibility as women of the world to create an environment where we can dream about a peaceful solution to conflict. We can arrange and participate in peaceful and silent marches to carry out peaceful negotiations and to air our views. Women's organizations must stand together and thereby play important roles in initiatives to end violence and to promote a sustainable solution to conflict and to promote peace. Women of all political, religious, and regional groups must mobilize and speak out for peace. Governments can pressurize into listening to the voices of women for peace through marches, vigils, petitions, mass meetings, and conferences. A recommendation for female leadership in the peace process is essential, as with greater female representation, women will bring a more comprehensive peace plan to the negotiating table by addressing societal and other needs and providing keys to establishing a more peaceful society over time. We need female role models at every level of institutions. The presence of a female leader can inspire other women in international, national, and local institutions. Women in decision-making positions can ensure that women's concerns and interests are taken into account when choices influencing peace and security are made. By failing to take advantage of women's thinking and contributions, and by underestimating the role women play, important parts of the peace puzzle can be missed, and there will be a risk of investing in peace and security solutions that will be most likely to fail. If peace and stability are to be sustainable, women must be involved at every stage, from setting government strategies to carrying out projects, and from voting on laws to implementing them in communities. The voice of us women must be heard and listened to. They must recognize our transformative powers, and we as women of the world must defend and promote our inclusion in every way. If the world is serious about peace, it is the only way forward. In conclusion, I would like to leave you with a piece from the World Peace Newsletter. The greatest thing in life is eternal peace, external peace, and global peace. Peace is the key ingredient to happiness. Peace within means peace without. May you be the change you wish to see in the world. Peace starts within. A change in perception leads to a change in attitude, which leads to a change in behavior, and that leads to a change in the world. Life is what you make it. So learn peace, teach peace, and share peace. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity.
Thank you. No, no, no.
Yeah. Okay, now I have the great pleasure to introduce our next speakers from Germany, Miriam and Theresia, who have started a great project in China, which is also challenging stereotypes. It can be called as heart to heart when people, despite all political turmoils and conflicts, when people from different nations stay open and curious and interact with each other and try to get to know each other. And after the last summit in Brussels, also our community started many of such projects, which some of them grow big, and project of Miriam and Theresia did also grow big because they just published a book, and we are grateful that they are going to share this inspiration with us. Please, Miriam and Theresia.
Thank you so much, Anna. Thank you very much, speakers. I'm still very touched, so I have a hard time speaking generally, but I'm happy to be here with you, to be invited here. I feel very honored. Yes, Miriam and I, we are two German women, and we met in Beijing. Our husbands were sent by their companies to go to China, and we were the joining wives to go with them. Both of us had lived abroad before, but China was an all different experience altogether. It was confusing and contradictory, and yet very fascinating. It was intimidating and yet very beautiful, all at the same time. It was simply very different from any country we had visited before. Due to the language barriers, it wasn't that easy to get in touch with people and to ask all the questions we had. Most of our queries were related to our roles as women, mothers, and wives, such as why are so many children brought up by their grandparents in the countryside? And how do their mothers, mostly migrant workers, cope with it? How do women organize motherhood and work? Do they have easy access to the labor market? How do they handle the rapid changes in society? Which causes alienation between the generations? Do young women still have to fulfill their parents' traditional expectations regarding marriage and motherhood? What do women really think about the one-child policy, and how were their families affected by it? What values are important to them personally and with respect to the education of their children? Which topics are currently important to women in China? We are deeply convinced that listening to each other is the most important step to a more personally connected and peaceful world. First of all, we were pleasantly surprised with the openness of the women we started to interview. We were astonished that each of them was very special in her own way. Many had surprising things to tell. They had a story to share. On the other hand, some topics came up regularly. The difficulty in finding a husband, especially for the educated women. The social pressure to marry before becoming 30 years old. The poor living standards and lower level of education in the countryside. The burden to fulfill their parents' expectations, the desire to force less pressure on their own children, and the frustrations of trying to combine old traditions with modern life. We realized that some of their stories sounded similar to the ones being told here in Germany by our grandmother's generation. Just reminds us that it is not really the nationalities or cultures, but the circumstances that play a very big role. One thing we did not understand before starting the project was why mothers seemed to give away their children so easily. We learned that, of course, it wasn't any easier for them than it would have been for us. But there are various social and economic reasons that force them to do so. We discovered that the disparity is not based on our value systems regarding motherhood, but again, on living circumstances. For us, it was very important to show a realistic picture of China, one that focuses on people and not on a system. We were looking for similarities rather than for differences.
Hello, everyone. Yes, we didn't want to only highlight the problems of women as being migrant workers, belonging to ethnic minorities, suffering from abortions, or having to leave their child behind. Instead, we were interested to see the whole picture. We also wanted to talk to women we could relate to as being Germans and coming from such a different culture. That's why we spoke with a very diverse group, women from all ages, different levels of education, from the city and the countryside, all social backgrounds, workers, teachers, and artists alike. In order to be able to have an open and honest conversation, we think you have to communicate openness, and it must be very clear that you start a conversation without any preconceived notions about any political or historical events. The women entrusted us with their life stories because they knew that our project promotes understanding and they hope to reduce prejudices. They asked us to tell their stories back here in Germany. Yes, we definitely think that mutual understanding can only be achieved by listening to each other and communicating. We think that humans can relate quite easily to personal stories and feel empathy towards others, even if living in very different parts of the world. These intercultural bridges are a counterweight to what we hear daily in the news. Learning about others is always learning about oneself. We are convinced that despite our very diverse cultural backgrounds, there are many similarities between us. Of course, that means that we have to question ourselves. We are forced to think about our own values, privileges, and conditioning. It's exhausting to question yourself, but that's the premise of sincere tolerance. When I came back to Germany, I realized that I needed to change my view on the people living in my village. Why was it easier for me to relate to women in China than to the people in my hometown? You do not need to travel far. It's necessary to establish intercultural bridges wherever you are. That's why I recently started to interview and portray farmers, and I found out that they are as willing to talk about their lives as the Chinese women were. We think if you show honest interest, many people are willing to open up and hope to thereby create an understanding which can be a foundation for a great relationship. Women should use their voices to promote openness, tolerance, and love. We must be more confident in our own interests, reduce our prejudices, and make our common goals visible. We think that women can get in touch easily on a personal level. We share a lot of knowledge, and we should be aware of our similarities. If women strengthen their voices through cooperation, they can help solve people's problems. That is why we are very grateful for the work of P50 and for being able to contribute to this summit. Thank you very much for inviting us, and best regards from Theresia and Miriam.
Thank you very much, Miriam and Theresia. It is a very inspiring and beautiful project. Now I have the great honor and pleasure to introduce Caroline Coetzee from Canada, where it is very early also in the morning. Welcome. She is our next speaker. She is founder and president of Women in Governance in Canada, a non-profit organization with mission to encourage women to have positions, leadership in companies and boards. And she belongs to the top 100 most powerful women in Canada. And she was also appointed by the Prime Minister of Canada to the National Committee on Gender Equality. We look very much forward to you to share your view on how can women achieve even more impact.
Well, thank you so much. It's an immense honor for me to be here today. I'm really glad to meet all of you and get reacquainted with some of you that I've met in the past. Well, first of all, I mean, the theme of the summit is peace. So I feel very compelled to talk about this because I've lived through war. So I was born in Beirut. I've been living in Canada for 30 years, but I was born in Beirut. I grew up through the Lebanese Civil War, and there were obviously some obstacles on the way of my, my growth into an adult woman. I was 7 years old when the war started. I was 22 when it ended. During these 15 years, I did a few backs and forth between France, Canada, and back into Lebanon. So today, if you look at, the way that I was kindly introduced, you think, okay, this is someone who might have had an easy life. I actually think it's because I have had this difficult life that today I'm able to say, you can come out of your comfort zone, you can overcome obstacles, you can be persevering despite difficulties that are put in your way, because there are always going to be difficulties. I've done a lot of work around the theme of resilience. To me, this is key. Any leader, male or female, without resilience is not going to last. Crisis, we're just living one, a pandemic that, we probably collectively should have seen coming from things that we're learning now. But that being said, most of us had no clue this was coming and were really taken aback. So how do you thrive? How do you survive? How do you overcome? How do you continue despite things that you don't control? I strongly believe that perseverance is probably the most important ingredient for any leader. And us as women, we have everything that is necessary to take care of others, right? We are natural caregivers. We have a very democratic sense of leadership. We worry about, our community. We have a strong sense of community. And that, in my opinion, makes for unbelievably strong leaders. There are things that we need to get from men, that we need to learn, that we need to adapt to our leadership style. But if we are able to keep our femininity, and this is extremely important, some people will say, oh, women are too emotional, they're too sensitive. I disagree with that. I think we're being sensitive or being emotional doesn't mean that you're not able to lead a team, doesn't mean that you're not able to get results. But that, coupled with some of the amazing strength that men have and that we don't always master, like networking, for instance, and networking in a smart way, which is, meeting people is great. But then if you need something, if you want something, to be able to go and ask for it. I mean, men are really good at that, and we need to learn. And also, I would say, and this is what's going to bring my topic back into the war, is negotiations. So women, when they negotiate for themselves, so our salaries, for instance, they're not the best. And this is also one of the reasons that we have a gender wage gap. But when women negotiate on behalf of a community, then they are unbelievable negotiators. My daughter is a lawyer. I gave a talk at McGill University on negotiation. And it was interesting to see how these young women all thought, come on, what do you mean we're not good negotiators? Look at all the, great female litigators. Absolutely amazing negotiators. But we need to think of ourselves as well. So when you are being offered an opportunity, it comes with a certain salary. Men, even from the opening job, the very first role, men will, on average, ask for 7% more than what women will ask for, because way too often we underestimate ourselves. So negotiations for peace, which is the summit's topic, I find it extremely sad that there are so few women peace negotiators. We don't have as big an ego as men do. Maybe we should have a bit more ego so that we can have more self-confidence and understand our value. But that being said, in the 15 years that I witnessed war in Lebanon, never, ever was there a woman anywhere close to the negotiation table. So, all the back and forth that we had, peace, war, ceasefire, start again, and then changing alliances all the time, I remain convinced that had there been more women close to these, bloodthirsty men at power, that war wouldn't have lasted that long. That war wouldn't have yielded the disastrous results that we see today in 2020. An amazing country like Lebanon, where you can ski in the morning and go swim in the Mediterranean Sea in the afternoon, is on the verge of bankruptcy and famine. It is unbelievable to see that this country, after all that it's been through since 1975, still hasn't found a way out of the current situation. And I'll be honest, I really think that the fact that these men are the same men who, during my childhood and my teenage years, were in power. It is the same men that are still here today. They used to be young warlords, and now they're old warlords. They're still there. They haven't left the room for the younger generation. They haven't left room for women. And just even, a minister of status of women was created, I believe it's during the last elections, maybe 3 years ago. And guess who leads it? A male minister. I mean, it seems to me completely disconnected with reality. So let me tell you, when I arrived in Canada 30 years ago, I had extremely high expectations in terms of gender equality, in terms of equal representation of women at every level in every industry. And to a certain extent, it was true. But then my own career started progressing, and I became a director and then a vice president and then an executive vice president of Canada's largest medical expertise firm. And then I realized that there were no women around me, that all those women that I graduated with 20 years earlier had stalled halfway. And then I started doing some research, trying to understand what was the root cause of this. Why were we not being able to find, a durable solution to have women in female leadership, to have in decision-making bodies, to have women in every at every level of organizations and in every industry. I obviously quickly realized that there were some female obstacles that we were self-imposing, and I spoke about some of them a little bit earlier. But then, and then I built a team around me and built Women in Governance 10 years ago. We're 2020, so it was in 2010. We're celebrating our 10th anniversary, and we started working around women and everything that they needed to improve to be able to be on a board or in a decision-making body. And then we realized, is that enough? Is it all our fault? No, it's not. There are systemic problems in organizations that are preventing women to progress. So after finding a big group of male ambassadors who wanted to support us and be champions of the cause, because we're not going to be able to do this on our own. We need men and women to work at this together. We started working with McKinsey & Company, the largest consulting firm in the world, who supported us pro bono to create a parity certification. And so then we were able to give it tools to organizations who were saying, we cannot find the woman, there aren't enough women, we don't know why women are stalling, we don't know why they don't come back after their maternity leave, we don't understand. Listen, no excuses. Let's work on your gender gap in the workplace and understand, because everybody agrees that there are benefits to diversity. Obviously, our topic is women, but I mean diversity as a whole, people of different origins, religions, sexual orientation. It is the best way to have a robust decision made in any organization, any state, in any company, in any nonprofit. It is key. And at Women in Governance, we actually have co-chairs of our board who are male and female. All our events are co-chaired by a male and a female CEO. In our team, we have men, we have women, we have people of all ages from their 20s to their 50s. And this is how we come to a very robust decision-making process. We have more innovation. We are able to also, attract more people to the cause because they recognize themselves. We reflect society. And we've introduced in the certification, which has been ongoing for 4 years. We've had dozens of organizations that enroll every month, and major organizations we're very proud of. And we've introduced in 2020 the whole intersectionality aspect. So white women is one thing, but women of color, Indigenous women, LGBTQ women have additional obstacles, and we need to recognize that. And organizations need to reflect on what they need to do to actually attract and retain diverse talent. It is not enough to put it on your website. It is not enough for, all that lip service just to please your customers, or that it's not enough. And organizations with a certification are able to, first of all, measure the reality within their organization, because everybody thinks, well, we may have a problem, but we may not. They don't really know. How can you have an impact on a gap that you've never measured, that you don't understand the root causes of, that you don't know how to have an impact on? So this is where it makes a difference. So to me, to be in 2020 and still be talking about how can we attract women, 51% of the population, 60% of university graduates. It's a sad reality. And I'll tell you what I find even more scary is the fact that the minute there is a crisis, it is the first thing that is put aside. In the UK, when the crisis began, when the COVID crisis began, they have a legislation that requires organizations to divulge their pay gap. They decided to put that on hold because they said, oh, no, you know what? Corporations have enough to worry about right now. This is not, they're making it sound like this is not as important after all. So I think it's essential to have meetings such as this one. I think it's essential to continue our focus all together at working on coming together globally. And this is what I'm taking away from the pandemic is, first of all, I have found new ways to work. I was speaking in St. Petersburg, I think around the same time last year. I was just coming back from New Delhi. I've been speaking all over the globe in the past few years, and it's a lot. It's very demanding, and I'm lucky to have adult children. But for those of us who want to have some sort of a work-life balance, I think that the pandemic, although it demonstrated that women really are still the primary caregivers at home, and they had to juggle more than ever both work on Zoom and the kids in the background. I think that there's going to be new ways to allow women to participate in our economy. Women who maybe traditionally would have thought, this is too much for me. I don't want to be in a full-time job, demanding, having to be stuck in traffic to go to work, etc. So what I'm taking away is, first of all, that flexibility. There was a recent survey that demonstrated that only 8% of employees in Canada want to go back to the office full-time. So this is something that we're going to have to worry about, worry or leverage. And the other thing, to me, that was striking during this pandemic, is to see the disconnect between how amazingly well some female state leaders have been doing during COVID. We can think of Germany, of Taiwan, of New Zealand, Denmark, Iceland, etc. They did extremely well. A lot of women also, even in corporations, have demonstrated their capacity to come out of crisis. We've seen that also during the recession in 2008, 2009. But at the same time, women are those that are losing their jobs at a much more rapid pace than men during this pandemic. So have we learned nothing? Could it be that still the old boys club is thinking that they need to retain their buddies? They need to keep their teams of other men, white men for the most part, who look like them, talk like them, studied at the same school as them, while removing that element of diversity that was just going to make their organization stronger to face the pandemic. So I think that we need to keep at it, as I mentioned, and I just hope that what I've shared can resonate with some of you. I would be delighted to keep in touch with everybody that I meet at each Zoom. Please add me on LinkedIn. I would be happy to chat anytime. And I guess that about covers what I wanted to share. And I'm really, really, once again, humbled to be here amongst some amazing female leaders.
Thank you. Thank you, Caroline, for your speech, for your wonderful speech. We're glad to see you, and now we will continue. So today we speak a lot about speech, about love, because it is necessary to keep love in our hearts. So loving unconditionally and sincerely is a great work. Carol Kinsey Coleman, our next one-of-a-kind speaker and guest from the USA. She will tell us about what peer fusion is and how to enter the dialogue based not only on intellect, but also on mutual expenses. Carol is an author of the impact of body language. She is an author of numerous books. Her expertise has been cited in the Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, and many other newspapers. Please, Carol, welcome. Carol, are you here? Yes?
Okay. Now I'm here?
Yes.
Can
Great.
you hear me?
Yes,
All
yes.
right. First of all, I want to tell you I'm from Berkeley, California, and it has been so worth getting up at 3 a.m. to be part of this conference and to listen to all the wonderful speakers. As you mentioned, my expertise lies in body language and leadership presence for women. You asked me to speak on this topic of clear vision, and it's something that I don't address usually, but it's something that I've researched for one of those 13 books that I've written when I was looking at why we believe some people and don't believe others. And I think it ties into this because if you have a brain, you are biased. We're all biased. Some are positive biases, some are negative biases. So I want to cover just a few of what I found in my research and how that impacts. Those are the filters that get between us and that clear vision. And then at the end, I'll tell you a couple of things that'll help us remove some of those. The first thing that I noticed, and it really came out of a lot of work with body language and leadership presence, is that idea of confirmation bias. And that's what makes your first impression have so much power, because you have 7 seconds or less. So people are looking, first of all, at your gender, then your skin color, then the way you hold yourself, the way your expressions, the way you use your hands, the way, the kind of eye contact you make. All of that is done instantaneously and unconsciously. And by the way, it's a lot more difficult on a Zoom meeting because you don't have things like, how did I enter the room? Did I shake your hand? So you don't have touch, or I give you a hug, so, which I miss a lot, by the way. So those cues are gone. But once in those nanoseconds that you make up your mind, then we go into our first bias, which is confirmation bias. So I've decided by your expression or your gender or whatever else that I've noticed that you are a certain way. Confirmation bias means that from now on, I will be looking for those things that you do or say that confirm that unconscious decision that I've already made about you, which is why, like I say, understanding the value and the impact, particularly for women, of the first impression is key. The next huge bias that we all share is something that we've talked about a little bit indirectly, and that's that in-group, out-group bias. That's because our brains are lazy. No, it's not because we're bad people. It's because it's a lot easier to be around people that are like us because we don't have to work that hard to figure out what they're thinking. They're thinking pretty much along the lines that we're thinking. So that's relaxing and comfortable. You can use this bias to your advantage because as that psychological process of saying you're like me or you're not like me, which happens also fairly quickly, can be changed fairly quickly. If you've ever been to a sports game where you have on a certain color that represents your team, you are already created, just by your garment, you have created an in-group. There was a time that I was doing a keynote speech in one of the states in the US, and I went into an attached shopping mall. And I walked into a store and started chatting with the woman who was going to be waiting on me. And she said she'd just come back from Hawaii. And I said, really? I was married on Maui, one of the islands in Hawaii. That was all I had to do. We were now an in group. I got preferential service. I got preferential treatment. She liked me more immediately. So whatever you can do to find those commonalities, you can create an in group. But it's a bias you have to know is also working, and it can work in your disfavor. One of my favorite, because I do a lot of work with deception cues, is appropriate behavior bias, because this shows up a lot in lie detection. In most cultures, not all, but most cultures, if I don't look you right in the eye, if I start looking around the room, or I look down, or I can't make eye contact with you, it is a sign of deception. It isn't really a sign of deception, but that's how it's interpreted. I've seen people not get jobs because the interviewer said, she couldn't look me in the eye. She must have been holding something back. She must not have been honest. Obviously, eye contact has nothing to do with deception, but because of that appropriate behavior, we think that we would make eye contact if we were telling the truth. We start to judge other people in that way. There's an attractiveness bias. I found out that you're more likely to be believed if you're attractive than if you are not. There's obvious gender biases. Some of it works in our favor. You know, if we are, they did a study at Stanford University, and they said that if they had a robotic voice, but it was female giving a lecture, and they had a robotic voice, but it was male giving the same lecture, if the lecture was on relationships, emotions, the female voice was believed. It doesn't work so well in our favor if the lecture was on science and technology. So there is a definite gender bias that shows up in many, many ways. One of my favorites is to ask people to draw a picture of a leader, because almost always they will draw a male. Even in Germany, when Angela Merkel is, of course, a leader. So it's an interesting gender bias. Let me take a look at, oh yeah, this is one of my favorites, facial feature bias. This study comes out of Princeton, and they found that if you have 3 features on your face in different proportions, you're either more trustworthy, you're perceived as more trustworthy, or less trustworthy. And that is if the inside corners of your eyebrows are raised, you're more trustworthy. If they're lowered, you're not. And this is, I don't mean when you're making that expression. I mean, if that's how your face is formed. If your cheekbones are wide, you're more trustworthy. If they're narrow, you're less. If your chin is wider, you're more trustworthy. If it's narrow, you're less. Which leads into another bias called baby face bias. Because of course, if your face is open, your eyebrows are up, your cheekbones are there, you look more childlike and less threatening. If your eyebrows are down and your cheekbones are, you look more threatening. And by the way, that's why these instantaneous evaluations are in our brains, because our brains have been developed to keep us safe. So we are mostly looking for things that are going to threaten us. And if you don't understand that, it's difficult to overcome some of these biases to get that clear vision of one another. Bias by proxy is what I think of as stereotype. It's, I don't know you at all, but I've seen a lot of things about people that look like you in the media, on television, in the movies, or maybe I've worked with somebody that looks like you that I didn't like. Now, bias by proxy can also work in your favor. I joined a yoga class and I was immediately adored by one woman. And I found out it was because I looked just like her favorite aunt. So you see, I had that bias by proxy in my favor because I looked like someone she loved. But it could have worked the opposite had I looked like her aunt from hell. I think that all of these mental filters that we have are the things that come between us and being able to really connect with other people if we don't understand them. The three things that I found the most helpful, and I know other people, I hope, have found other things more helpful or as helpful that they can tell me about, is first of all, just become conscious of them. The reason that they're so powerful is that we don't recognize that that's going on. The minute you take an unconscious process and realize it's happening, you make it conscious, it loses some of its power because now you're taking control. And of course, the second step is once you realize that that could be happening, that you pause, that you put a beat or two or three in between that first decision you've made about someone, and you exhale and you realize that may be accurate, and it also may be a filter that you're looking at that person through. But I think the most powerful is something that I've been blessed to receive, and that is I've spoken in 28 countries. I've got clients in 28 countries, and I have made a lot of cross-cultural mistakes. And I have always been forgiven. And I remember one woman coming up to me after one of my, I have no idea what I did, but it was probably something terrible. And she said, Carol, don't worry, it's fine. We know your heart's in the right place. Now, if we had that same feeling about everybody we met, if we gave them the benefit of the doubt, if we really believed that their heart's in the right place, that, I think, is the epitome of love. And that takes off some of the veils that stands between us and that clear vision.
Thank you so much, Carol, for this talk. We had this conversation also earlier in the morning during the summit, how important it is to look inside and to be conscious of what we are thinking and about ourselves and what we think about others, to get to more understanding between each other. Yeah.
It's also helpful as women to realize that other people are going to be looking at us through those filters too, and to realize what we can do to make them work in our favor, because you can make that in-group, out-group bias work in your favor. You can make confirmation bias work in your favor by making a great first impression. So there are a lot of things that we can do once we understand they're in operation, and that we all have them. It's not them, it's all of us. And I think that's the real value here.
Thank you very much. Well, today we women from different continents have come together to demonstrate our commitment to peace. And peace is usually understood as the absence of war or peaceful cooperation across nations. But this summit has showed that we must understand peace much more profoundly. The global shutdown has forced people into their homes, into their communities, into their countries, demonstrating very clearly what are the consequences of extreme isolation on individuals, societies, and countries. And the main consequence, in my view, is that those who are privileged got far better chances to get through the crisis than those who are less privileged because of their color, their education, their gender, or simply the country they live in. And Joy Nicole made it clear that our world is still a world of segregation. And of course, it has historical roots, which reach far back into the history of the humankind, when people used to fight for resources, when being superior to others increased your chances to survive and that of your offspring. But we must rethink our history to move forward to a future which is more right and just. And the summit made also clear that we do not have to, or in other words, that we do not live in a world of shortage anymore. We do not have to exploit others to prosper and to survive. We live in a world of abundance, but this abundance is not available to everybody. And to belong to a privileged group, which is sometimes just in many countries, it is obviously to be white, or to grow up in a good family, to have good education, or to live in a peaceful country. It is, of course, not a matter of choice, but it is a matter of chance. It is a chance and responsibility to use own skills and status and resources in order to move to a better world. And not just because this world would be nicer, but also because it will be safer for everybody. And the summit has showed how women can take this chance, or are taking this chance at all levels of our society. At the governmental level, what is Gülden doing? At the level of institutions and companies, which is Caroline doing and Joy Nicole, or just heart to heart, which is Marina doing and Tatiana and Miriam were talking about. And I'm sure that standing together, our voices will become louder and they will be heard. And I thank you so much that all the speakers and participants that we came together from different countries at all thinkable time of the day to make this inspiring connection possible. And I look so much forward to everything which will happen in the follow-up of the summit. And I'll forward the word to Marina for closing remarks.
Before closing, I expect all of you to Istanbul next year.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dear participants of our Summer Peace Summit, today is a really great day. A lot of time we're preparing this summit. It is not just 1 second to do it, you know, but we're happy because your speech was excellent. You opened, all of us opened your hearts, and we feel it. So today we have exchanged not only information, but we exchange our energy, our love, and we have discussed problems faced by women worldwide. These problems require solutions. We can address them only by joining our efforts. I suggest that organizing committee should prepare a resolution and send to all participants of the summit. I thank everybody for their participation, for your time, for your joining our community. Thank you so much for everybody. Maybe somebody wants to say some words. You can do it.
We have seen that we received a lot of comments in the chat, and of course all the questions will be responded to, and now we can just open the summit to discussion.
Time is over, yes. We are working for 2 hours, and I think we are tired, everybody tired, and our best congratulations to everybody that we are together. I'm very happy.
Thank you so much. And to my amazing co-organizers, you amazing women who love the earth and love the world and love people and humanity, thank you. It's been such an enjoyable morning. I feel refreshed and renewed and invigorated. I feel informed and empowered. And so thank you. And I am looking forward to our continued work. And yes, I think absolutely a resolution is necessary. Every single speaker was prolific and profound. And I think it speaks to the fact that we're ready, as a people, we're ready to stop scratching the surface and dig a little deeper and get some work done. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, dear Joy.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you also. It was a privilege to be part of this, but what I really am looking forward to is the next time we all get together in person, because as charming and wonderful as it is to be able to use technology to connect, and believe me, it is a gift, but there is nothing like the amazing energy that happens when a group of talented, brilliant women get together. It is magical, and I just can't wait for the next opportunity.
Thank you, Carol.
I hope
Barbara.
that next opportunity will be Istanbul. I look forward to receiving you, all these smart ladies, to be there and deliver all these valuable topics in person.
Thank you, Guldan. Barbara.
From South Africa, I would also like to thank you for the wonderful opportunity. Yes, and I'm not a button person. I don't want to press buttons. I want to give hugs and kisses and gifts and meet everyone and talk and laugh. So I'm looking forward to as well. But thank you for this. It was a wonderful opportunity. Wonderful speakers. Everyone was so well presented. Everyone was well informative. It was absolutely fabulous. It was lovely to see you all here. Marina, my dear husband, is sitting on the left, on my right side. You cannot see him, but he's been watching you all. So, and Joy Nicole, my husband has heard so much about you. So it was so nice for him to see you again. Yes, all my friends all over the world, from Russia, everywhere. Barbara, was lovely to see you too. This was just fabulous. Thank you for the opportunity, and we look forward to meeting, God willing, in person soon. Hey, thanks.
So,
Yes. Theresia and me were here for the first time, and I think I can speak for both of us that we really enjoyed listening to you, and it was very inspiring for us. Thank you that you gave us the chance to talk about our project. I think we tried to do something and to act, and so we have a lot of work in front of us because we want to tell our stories to many, many women around the world. And we thank you, Anna, for inviting us. So we were able to tell you about our work and our inspiring stories that we heard. Thank you.
thank you. It is very,
Yeah.
yes, Tatiana. Yes, yes, yes,
Yes.
you can speak.
Thank you so much. It was very inspiring to be today, to hear all these speeches and to be among these great minds, women energy. This is unbelievable. And I do agree that meeting in person, it's just a new different level. This is a completely different feeling. And definitely next year, it has to be the next step. And thank you very much for organizing this, for inviting me to speak, to share the message. And listening to all these amazing women and beautiful ideas, I got so much inspiration, because this is actually, we are looking at intercultural communication in action. Like, we are sharing ideas, and that's happening right now. This is what makes me so happy, that it's just an amazing example for the rest of the world. That women can be united, they can share ideas, they can bring forward, solutions. And wow, I'm really moved and touched. And thank you so much, everybody, for sharing your thoughts. And it's great to meet you. It's great to be part of this amazing community. So thank you.
Thank you.
We can.
So we need to say goodbye to everybody, because I understand that everybody wants to stay here, because it is a great energy. We made it. This is the great energy of love. It doesn't matter where we live, on which language we speak, but we're together and we feel love, and it is great. It's really great.
Can we open our videos, see each other and take a picture and then say bye?
Yes, yes, yes. Great. I will call our Pavel, our photographer. You know him. He will make a photo and we will look at our we will prepare our head. He's with us. He made our video, so we will have a good photo and good video. How we did in last year, and we will prepare interesting article. We will send you this article. You will see it. Then we will publish it. Every time we do it, so it will be great. Now, Pavel, where is you? Where are you? We just look. He's making. Yes. Everybody is ready. 1, 2, 3. Pavel, are you ready? Ты сделал фотографию? Что он?
Alex, can't hear.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
So bye you. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Till the next time.